We're going to talk about the LunaOi Vietnamese field drama, okay? And I'm not talking about it because it's drama, because I think it really shows that a lot of people don't know basic things about rural society and also not about Marxism. I'm not like a fan of LunaOi or anything. I've talked to her a few times. She's very nice, very nationalistic, in a way that isn't like a good way anymore, but she's also correct about a lot of things. I think it's important to have, in English language spaces, people from countries like Vietnam, like China, who actually do reflect the opinion of normal people in those countries. And she does. Okay, the average person in China and Vietnam likes their government. That doesn't mean that they're right about everything, but she's important to have around. You don't have to accept every single thing that she says about Vietnam is true. Obviously, take it critically. But the reason why she inspires such like virulent reactions from Western supposed leftists is because she is exactly that. Because she is sort of a reminder to them that like the people of these like countries that they've sort of been taught to think of as like really weird and authoritarian, etc., actually don't see their own countries in that way. Or at least a lot of them don't. They want to believe that these people want liberal democracy, that they want freedom or whatever. And someone like her, who is kind of a living antithesis to this idea, really annoys them. But aside from anything about her personally and about that sort of thing, which I think is also very important, the whole affair really shows how dumb people are when it comes to agriculture in general. And when it comes to like objectively good programs being undertaken in the third world that you should also want for your own country. It's like this immediate defensiveness, like immediately people have to attack this sort of thing for some reason. I don't know why. Like it's an impulse they have. Like I think at the end of the day, these people are just very defensive of sort of liberal capitalist democracy and the process and the institutions of it. So when they see a country that like is basically a government saying we're gonna give people a bunch of fucking land because we can, that pisses them off for some reason. It pisses them off because it's not a part of the process or whatever. So the original tweet, and the guy who posted, or the person who posted this, deleted their account, by the way. They got destroyed so badly they decided to just delete their account. So Luna posted this tweet saying like, I got this 500 square meter rice field from the government of Vietnam for free because I was born in a rural area. That's cool. Okay. And this post is like, you only got this rice field because of your family's connection to the party in power. This is 500 square meters. That's 0.1 acres. 0.05 hectares. Do you know how big that is? I think it's like the size of like the average American backyard, like 2 tennis courts. On that, you can grow about 250 kilograms of rice per year, which you'll sell for about $100. People were replying to that being like, wow, you basically own like a fucking massive field or something. Like this one right here. And someone said to this guy who was like attacking her for this, it's 500 square meters, don't worry. And his response is, what do you mean? That's gigantic, right? People just have no fucking idea what's going on here. They don't understand anything about the countryside. And I don't think you need to be from the countryside to understand anything about it, but the basics would be nice. Here's the thing. This is such a small amount of land that a single family couldn't even sustain themselves on it. One person could not even sustain themselves on this amount of land. It's not big. You could take that as something against the Vietnamese land ownership program, but like Luna, from what I understand, as a whole, her family owns 200 square meters of land, which is about half an acre. Now that is enough land for one family. One family to be able to feed themselves and sell the excess and live off that. That's actually enough. But this is not, okay? But somehow people think that she's like a rich landlord because of this. And they tried to get her on technicalities. Like, people were literally calling her petite bourgeois. This person said, the people's petite bourgeois, excuse me. Peasants owning land, small-holding peasants. Small-holding peasants are not petite bourgeois in any respect. Not in Marx, not in anything that came after Marx. You are not petite bourgeois when you own something, whether it's productive land or like your own means of production. You are petite bourgeois when you own your own means of production. You can afford to buy the labor of other people to help you to work it, but you still have to work it yourself. It's when you are essentially like a small business owner with employees. Like a small business owner with employees, but who is not yet making enough of a profit that they cannot give up working themselves. That's what a petit bourgeois is. In the rural context, that would be either a peasant who's able to rent out parts of their land as a landlord, or a peasant who has ascended, they're making it sound like fucking, they're ascending to Super Saiyan form, like a peasant who is rich enough and who owns enough land that they can afford to hire wage laborers to help them work it. That is what a petit bourgeois is. This is not a petit bourgeois in any respect. Like, it wouldn't even be worth it for her to hire someone to work this land because it's so fucking small and produces so little. Like, this land, you could maintain this, like, working it for like 4 or 5 hours a week. This is equivalent to like a backyard plot where you grow tomatoes or something. And I think this whole affair really just shows like a fundamental misunderstanding of what class actually is. Like, for example, you could say that I'm a petit bourgeois, even though I personally don't hire labor to help me work on my channel, but I could probably afford to do so. So yeah, I'm probably a petit bourgeois. But you're not a petit bourgeois if you own a tiny fucking amount of land where you grow a tiny little bit of rice on. If we're going by Marx alone, Marx was very fucking clear on small holding peasants basically being their own thing. Essentially disconnected from class society almost, because, you know, if you're a small holding peasant, at least according to Marx, you basically just, you know, you have your community, you have your farm, you don't really think about anything else. That's why Marx failed to see the revolutionary potential in the peasantry, and he was disproven massively in Cuba, in China, in Vietnam. He was completely wrong. But still, if we're going by Marx, that's what he said. Just the general like ignorance of the rural world is very clear. People don't really know what land reform is. Like, they see this as something liberal. Like, so it's not socialist. You're giving people land. It's not socialist. Who cares? Socialism isn't achieved overnight. A big part of achieving socialism possible is breaking up massive land holdings, you know, giving them to individuals or cooperatives. That is a key step towards being able to form socialism. Because otherwise you're going to have these massive fucking land monopolies who essentially just control food production. You have to do land reform. So if you're like consider yourself a Marxist, an anarchist, or a leftist, which is a bullshit term, you need to like look up basic things like measurements of like, what is an acre? What is a hectare? What is life like for the average peasant in my country or other countries? Or do peasants even still exist in my country? You know, what is the character of the countryside in my country? For example, in the US, the countryside is basically like massive capitalist farmers. Whereas in Vietnam, you have lots of people who could be considered peasants who are essentially working their own land. And also, people should think about things like, why do you have such a virulent fucking aggressive reaction to seeing something like this? Why do you have to attack it? This is a good thing. Like, whatever you want to criticize the Vietnamese government for, this is a good thing. And for all the people who attack like Vietnam, China, whatever, as not having freedom, it's like they're always saying that with the implicit idea that the country that they live in has freedom because it's liberal and democratic. Economic freedom as in your freedom as a worker to not have your welfare tied to the whims of a private employer is infinitely more important than your freedom to say like, oh, I want to do a communist revolution. I hate the government on social media, which never even does anything. So if you want me to choose between like absolute fucking freedom of speech, like what the US supposedly has, at least in theory, and living in Vietnam and having the government give me like a fucking acre of land to work with my family and make an independent living off of, I'll take the second option every single time, thank you very much. That, to me, and to really anyone, is what freedom really is. You're not free unless your basic needs are met. You're not free if your labor power is controlled by other people. That is a fundamental tenet of freedom. And it's a huge problem that these people like who attack this sort of thing and who have these sort of liberal notions of freedom, have them so ingrained into their mind that they essentially end up upholding them. It's very important that we attack these people on this sort of idea of freedom, like what freedom actually is. The basics of like having your material needs fulfilled are far more important to you being free than anything else. Yeah, farming in the US is a very bourgeois profession. Farm owners in the US overwhelmingly own massive farms. There are some smaller ones, but they overwhelmingly own massive farms. They hire wage laborers, etc. They're not struggling. But yeah, there's my take on this dumb Luna. It's not really LunaOi drama. I think it's more like Western fragility drama. People who just get very angry when they see third world countries implementing objectively good programs for some reason. Like, I think the Chinese government sucks, but I think it's good that the Chinese government is slowly but surely implementing housing programs, for example. That's good. Great. Good job. Other countries should do the same. Any other country that still has like a big peasant sector like Vietnam does should absolutely do land reform like this. And if you can't simply acknowledge that, if you have to drag your feet on it and be like, oh, but what about these other bad things in Vietnam? You're very clearly just made uncomfortable by anyone talking about these countries in anything remotely resembling a positive light, because apparently you're only allowed to talk positively about a country if it has like a liberal democratic system where you can vote for like the slightly less bad candidate who is influenced by massive economic powers in society. And then there's like the whole question about why is freedom of speech the way it is in China and Vietnam, and a huge part of that is sort of a siege mentality that is sort of embedded in the psyche of these countries through centuries of imperialism. So do I think that China and Vietnam should have or even need to crack down on political speech the way that they do? Absolutely not. It's kind of pointless. But I understand why they do. In part, yeah, it's the fault of the governments, but in another part, it's because these countries have been essentially subverted by foreign powers and been victims of colonialism, etc., etc., in many cases in living memory, in Vietnam especially. So they sort of have this mentality that, we need to stop foreign infiltration, and the way for them to do that is to like limit the spectrum of acceptable speech, which, make no mistake, happens in your country too. In your country, the spectrum of acceptable speech is limited more by like the corporate captured media than it is by the government directly. Different, less direct method, but that has the same effect on politics.